Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Happy New Year. It feels like it's been a year since I've seen you, Dawes.
It really has been. It's been a long old time, and a lot has changed. One little digit just changing on the end of the date. I'm still going to get it wrong for the first 3 or 4 months of the year, like I do every single year.
Oh,
but
definitely.
We'll get there by March or April.
Yeah, hopefully. Anyways, my name is Gabby Snyder.
My name is Adam Dorricott.
And we're going to jump right into your first top 16 match here in Dallas. It's going to be a very exciting match. We have Collin Heier versus Patrick Smith. Both these trainers are raring to go, and I'm really excited to see this matchup. I think, they took last night to think about what's going on, to think about how their teams are going to match up against each other, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of really interesting mind games because of that.
Definitely, and when they play these 2-day tournaments, things get a little bit different because you obviously have the night to go home, prepare, maybe see if you've got some information that you can gather from friends. It happens. But that definitely makes both players aware a little bit more of what's going to be going on. There's not as many surprises, and they can play around that right off the bat in game 1. They don't have to wait for game 3 to do that. So it's going to be very interesting. I know a lot of people very interested in seeing some of Patrick's team. A lot of people very excited. A couple of the members on that team. So a good request for that. Got him on stream so we can see that in action. It's a Pokemon we actually saw yesterday. Didn't do enough, and I want to see if Patrick can do a little bit more with it. We did see Collin's team on stream yesterday, and he had a really exciting set. Played his team a little differently to how we've seen some other people, but eked out a win, and it was absolutely fantastic. So now they're both in cut, looking to push on. The further they go in cut, the more championship points they get, the more prize money they get, and those championship points are going to help in the qualification for Worlds, so that'll be good.
Yeah, 200 championship points are on the line for the winner of this tournament, getting them approximately 2/5 of the way to the Pokemon World Championships this year. Also some prize money. I believe it is a lot. I forget how much it is exactly, but it is a significant chunk of change.
Yeah, it really helps, and I know players who are playing it as a circuit, they like to go on, and basically if they take the prize money from one event, what they do is they use that to fund the travel to the next event. So it kind of, if you get a nice early win in a regional, you can go to another regional. It just makes the format really easy for them to move on and keep on playing. So both these players definitely hungry to get out of the top 16, be pushed into the top 8, and I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. It looks like they are in team preview, so let's get this game started. We have Patrick Smith running Tapu Koko, Crocodile, Gigalith, Braviary, Celesteela, and Oranguru versus Collin's team of Garchomp, Arcanine, Metagross, Tapu Fini, that Vikavolt we saw yesterday from a few trainers, and Porygon 2.
Well, I'll start with Patrick's team. I think the one thing people are going to be asking questions about right off the bat is the Braviary, of course. We did see one very early on the stream, and it didn't do much, so people want to see a lot more come out of that, and I think his moveset could be useful. I mean, it doesn't have anything that's going to be hitting for super effective damage with Brave Bird in that team, I don't think, so definitely interesting. It could properly answer the Vikavolt, but that's going to be an interesting matchup, of course. Vikavolt being used by some, and I really like Patrick's lead as I just look up and see it on the stream.
Yeah, we see Braviary and Crocodile from Patrick against Tapu Fini and that Vikavolt from Collin. So both of these trainers bringing out one of their more interesting picks on their team composition.
I think we've both got the pick that we want to see. We didn't see Collin bring the Vikavolt yesterday, and clearly he feels it's going to be good in this matchup. He doesn't have the same kind of problem he had yesterday where there was a Marowak around that had to be a little bit concerned of course, then it's just going to be a little bit easier. So I think Collin has a stronger lead here. Vikavolt puts good pressure down on the Braviary, and Tapu Fini puts good pressure down on the Crocodile. So definitely a good offensive pressure. If Patrick can maybe use his turn to set something up, maybe a Tailwind coming out of that Braviary, that would help him a lot. And that would mean even if it does get knocked out early on, it's done something to help the rest of his team. I think it's important for him to keep that around.
Definitely. I think speed control is the name of the game with a matchup like this. Looking at Collin's team, other than that Porygon 2, it doesn't look like he has that many options for speed control. So an early advantage could really swing things in Patrick's favor, and it looks like an early advantage is exactly what we're going to see thanks to the Z move.
Yeah, we're going to see Crocodile unleashing the Tectonic Rage. Clearly wants to get something off the field. It's going to be the Tapu Fini, of course, with Vikavolt having Levitate. And if you can get rid of Tapu Fini, which is a Pokemon that's usually very hard to remove from the field, then you're in really good shape. He's probably done his damage calculation. Doesn't quite get enough, though, and misses out on getting the knockout there.
Braviary, though, following right up, using that Brave Bird to try and knock out that Tapu Fini. Will it be enough? It is a critical hit, and unfortunately, Tapu Fini is knocked out. Braviary taking some damage thanks to the recoil, and also taking damage from a Thunderbolt from that Vikavolt, knocking the Braviary out as well.
No, so very smart play from Patrick there. Identifies a threat to the team. He obviously is a little bit worried about that Tapu Fini, but he capitalizes on the fact that even though his lead was somewhat on paper weaker as a tight matchup comes along, what he's actually been able to do is be faster and guarantee a knockout on the Tapu Fini before it does anything to threaten the Crocodile. So yes, he uses his Z move, but this is one of those times we see a Z move come out for great impact in the game. Getting rid of a threat like that, it did take a double target, admittedly, but still removing that threat is absolutely fantastic. We are going to see Collin, though, get the chance to bring in the Garchomp, and he may be able to go for that Discharge and Earthquake combination.
Yeah, we see that Garchomp take the field on Collin's side of the field. Celesteela coming out on Patrick's side. Celesteela not too worried about the potential threat of an Earthquake, but that Vikavolt is still at full health, and we saw an immensely powerful Thunderbolt from it. Whether or not we're going to see that again, we'll have to wait, because it looks like we're getting a second Tectonic Rage, this time from that Garchomp.
It's going to be Collin's turn to try and knock something out. Obviously only one target with Celesteela being flying type, so we're going to see if Garchomp can get an easy knockout with its Tectonic Rage. It's going to be going into that Crocodile, and if he can get rid of that, that will very quickly level up the Pokemon. Ground EMZ is something we've seen as an adaptation on Garchomp after a few weeks of the format. It's going to be doing huge damage and taking a very tidy one-hit knockout. Very easy to do without the Intimidate down, and I think very smart play from Collin to bring it in and get what he needed.
Celesteela with Flamethrower onto Vikavolt. It deals a little bit under half damage and reveals that Celesteela is holding a Life Orb, which is a very interesting tech. I don't think we've seen that yet all day, but Celesteela gets knocked out from that Thunderbolt from Vikavolt. It's just so powerful. It's able to deal so much damage to arguably the biggest wall currently in the metagame.
Well, it looks like Patrick's training on this Celesteela is completely off the wall, something that most players haven't picked up on. Patrick going for something very offensive, carrying the Life Orb to do more damage, and getting knocked out cleanly by that Thunderbolt from Vikavolt implies that it's been trained to be more offensive, do more damage, and not tank up as many hits, so it likely has sacrificed something like the recovery move in Leech Seed, and he's just able to really do more damage, but in this turn he doesn't do enough at all. Vikavolt, slow, quite bulky, and very offensive, manages to just tank up a Flamethrower, not boosted by anything like the Sun or a same type attack bonus, and just gets a return knockout with Thunderbolt. So very quick match there, both trainers exchanging big knockouts with their Tectonic Rages, and I think Collin just kind of board positioned a little better. Admittedly, he lost the Tapu Fini, and in a way I think that might have been a good thing for him. If Tapu Fini stays in the field, he ends up playing a little bit slowly. But without that, he was just forced into picking up the pace very, very early on, pushing on, retaliating with his own Tectonic Rage, and I think that gave him the momentum he needed to win.
Yeah, I don't think Collin needed the Tapu Fini in that game. It almost feels like he had it out there as sort of a false target for Patrick to worry about. Obviously, if you leave Tapu Fini alone, it'll be able to deal a nice chunk of sort of residual damage. It is hard to take down, but knowing that, or forcing Patrick to target it so early on really gave Vikavolt the opening it needed to start knocking out the Braviary, preventing Patrick from possibly using Tailwind if he brought that, to knock out that Celesteela even. It was a really great play by Collin, and Patrick really needs to adjust. He needs more than just the Flamethrower from that Celesteela if he wants to be able to stop that Vikavolt from essentially winning Collin this top 16 match.
Yeah, it's something that he needs to stop, and I think Vikavolt has shown, it's obviously made top cut here, so it wasn't just a sort of idea that players had, it was something players have really picked up on, and I think they're going to be able to push on with. So I think if Patrick wants to come back in this game, he's going to have to bring a better answer to Vikavolt. He definitely has it in that Gigalith. I think that could be doing a lot of work, and if he can keep Braviary a little safer, maybe catch it with a Brave Bird, I think he's going to be doing really well.
Yeah, you know, looking at Braviary, it is one of those Pokemon that you don't see that often in this metagame, but it has a pretty decent attack stat. You know, it'll be able to fire off some very powerful Brave Birds. We saw it able to knock out that Tapu Fini after getting some chip damage from that Crocodile Z move. Maybe this time target the Vikavolt. Don't worry so much about the threat of Muddy Water, Moonblast, or any of those other moves that we typically see on a Tapu Fini. Knowing that Celesteela doesn't care as much about those moves, I think being able to stop the thing that stops your Celesteela will give Patrick more momentum, because it is sort of weird seeing an offensive Celesteela, but it is really a great call, because if you can keep it out on the field, sort of like Tapu Fini, and keep dealing respectable amounts of damage, that's really all you need to keep that momentum going.
Well, both players leads hitting the field, and they're keeping the momentum they had from game 1 with identical leads coming back out. So interesting to see if Patrick makes the same play here, goes to that turn 1 Tectonic Rage, if Collin can predict, maybe get in even better position. The changes that they make here, I think, are going to be very, very important. But Patrick knows what Collin does on this turn, and if he can deal with that, he's going to be in a better position to take this to game 3.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be seeing Patrick double target that Tapu Fini again this turn. If anything, we'll see something like a Brave Bird into that Vikavolt, and if Crocodile has a move like Crunch or maybe Rock Slide or just some other way to target the Vikavolt, I think that is public enemy number 1 right now for Patrick.
It definitely is. I think Braviary and Crocodile, between the pair of them, can definitely deal with that Vikavolt. Unfortunately, you know, if you leave Tapu Fini on the field, then it can set up, it can get, we've seen all sorts coming out of Tapu Fini, substitutes, Calm Minds. You can even get caught by a Muddy Water and have your accuracy drop, so it's definitely something you can't leave alone. But at the same time, the Vikavolt picking up a pretty much role of significance. It's not going to be targeted down by both this turn, though.
Crocodile switching out, Gigalith taking the field in its place, bringing a nice Sandstorm with it thanks to that new Sandstream ability it gained in this generation. Braviary protecting this turn, so a very defensive play by Patrick here. Tapu Fini using Dazzling Gleam. We're not going to see Muddy Water quite yet from it. Dealing a decent chunk of damage to Gigalith. It does have a ton of special defense. Thunderbolt into the Braviary, and it will not connect thanks to that Protect.
No, Patrick changing up from what he did in game 1. Obviously went very offensive in game 1, and this game he's decided to go defensive with a bit of switching around. And a very good switch, just gets a little bit of chip damage down, about 25% from that Dazzling Gleam. Obviously he gets the Sandstream up, bringing Sandstorm, manages to, you know, get some chip damage down on Collin's Pokemon. And I think he might need that as we go through the rest of the game. So I'm interested to see if that change of playstyle is going to be what will take us to a game 3.
You know, I agree that he needs that chip damage, but we also saw that Crocodile outspeed both Pokemon on the field. Unless Crocodile maybe will benefit somehow from this Sandstorm. I'm not quite sure how, other than that defensive boost that Ground and Steel-type Pokemon get. You know, I'm not sure if Gigalith can do much to help him here. It is a very bulky Pokemon, but it's also very slow. So both the Vikavolt and the Tapu Fini will have a chance to attack before it can do anything. Granted, the Braviary should be able to move first, and we do see Collin switch out the Tapu Fini. So if anything, that Vikavolt will be targeting the... Never mind, Vikavolt leaving the field and Garchomp coming out in its place. So Collin making a very defensive play here, switching out both of his Pokemon. We do see Braviary go for the Brave Bird. If it targets that Garchomp, it could have taken some damage thanks to the Rough Skin ability we saw yesterday. But instead, it targets that Metagross, and Metagross just so strong, not taking any damage. Garchomp withstanding the Stone Edge from that Gigalith.
Very, very good double switch there from Collin. It's not often you see a double switch, and when a player makes it, it's got to pay off because you don't get anything accomplished on that turn. You just get a little bit of board maneuvering, but he makes the right predict on which Pokemon goes in which slot. Bringing in Metagross to eat up the Brave Bird is fantastic, and it probably does, you know, a little bit of recall similar to the amount of damage it did. Even better, you know, knows the threat of Stone Edge from Gigalith is a real thing. Switching in the Garchomp gets to, you know, eat up that damage, and I think especially with the speed he has on his side of the field, we saw Metagross had a real party against the Gigalith yesterday on Collin's team, and Garchomp obviously able to do good work against it. So I don't think at all Collin's in a bad position from that switch. It just looked like a very dead turn for him, and he's forced Patrick into switching, so that must be a good thing.
We see Crocodile come back out on the field, hoping to intimidate that Garchomp. Unfortunately for Patrick, Metagross's Clear Body ability will negate any attack drops or stat drops in general. We see Garchomp protect this turn, might be afraid of something from that Braviary, who goes for a Brave Bird into the protecting Garchomp. Metagross with that Meteor Mash, if it targets the Crocodile, it could be a huge turn, but instead targeting that Braviary, bringing it down to just a sliver of health. Unfortunately, though, we need one more turn of Sandstorm damage in order for that to have knocked out.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a slower game we see here. And a nice switch in, I think, from Patrick. Of course, we have now the Garchomp and the Crocodile facing off, so we could have a bit of a Tectonic Rage War. Would be interesting to see if that comes out this turn from the Garchomp. Of course, if it catches the Crocodile, we've seen it's a one-hit knockout. If it catches the Gigalith, it's going to be doing really, really big damage. So I think he has to just be a little bit smart about the use of it. Both players, I think, want to click in that Tectonic Rage, but they have to be a little bit cautious of where they do it and if they are safe enough to do it. Of course, Metagross, potentially having access to Bullet Punch, would be able to just catch a knockout on Braviary before it does anything. There's no Tapu Lele to stop that with the Psychic Terrain. So Braviary could pretty much be considered not a threat this turn, and now he's able to just throw things in towards that Crocodile.
We do not see a bullet punch from that Metagross this turn. Instead, it protects, and we see a Tectonic Rage from Collin. That Garchomp's going to send somebody to the Earth's core.
Yeah, it's going to be that Crocodile. Of course, it's not going to be effective on the Braviary, and this sort of shows the difference between Crocodile and Garchomp as the user of the Ground EMZ. Garchomp is a little bit faster naturally, so it's going to be able to just take things and drive them into the core of the earth a little bit earlier. It's going to catch the Crocodile but not get a knockout because of that Intimidate this time from Patrick. So that very, very smart play from him to make sure the Ground EMZ using Garchomp does get intimidated. Very, very smart.
We see a massive Brave Bird from that Braviary into the Garchomp. Unfortunately, the combination of Rough Skin and Recoil knocks it out. Crocodile targeting that Metagross with a Crunch, so a very smart protect by Collin there. That Crocodile definitely threatens Metagross's presence on the field.
Yeah, and I think Metagross is going to be one of those answers that he has to pretty much everything. Patrick bringing in the Oranguru now, though. Oranguru very well known for its Trick Room options. It's usually been used with Pokemon that thrive under Trick Room. It's a very safe setter of Trick Room, usually early in the game though. It's rare we see it come in late in the game, but if he can perhaps set up Trick Room now, then get the Gigalith in instead of the Crocodile. Obviously Crocodile liable to get knocked out this turn. Then he's going to be able to use Gigalith under Trick Room, attacking twice a turn with Instruct. So he's kind of playing for the next couple of turns now. I think he just needs to do a little bit with the Crocodile, and he's going to be switching around on Collin's side of the field.
We see Vikavolt take the field on Collin's side. Garchomp going for an Earthquake, so that Metagross definitely getting out of the way. Does not want to take damage from that ground-type move. It should knock out that Crocodile, but the big question is how much damage will it do to Oranguru? And unfortunately, it hardly does any damage at all, and Oranguru is free to set up Trick Room.
Yeah, Collin with no answer to Trick Room there, and that's something I think players, particularly with the popularity of the hard Trick Room now, people are definitely learning more about how to play their Trick Room. I like what he's done here and bringing it in later in the game, which just gives him an option. Gigalith in a very good position this turn. Of course, it's going to be moving first under the Trick Room, and although we've seen Vikavolt able to take attacks quite well with its natural bulk, it definitely can't take two of them. So that double target going twice, likely able to pick up knockouts. It's going to be really tough, I think, for Collin to just take all those attacks, not get knocked out, and do enough damage to the Gigalith, because that's the only threat on the field right now. Metagross is in the back, and that could be the answer.
Yeah, I think Collin's going to have to let either Garchomp or Vikavolt, or honestly both these Pokemon, get knocked out this turn so he can position himself better moving forward. That Garchomp just has so little HP unless both Gigalith and Oranguru miss an attack on it, maybe due to something like Rock Slide, which a lot of Gigalith are known to carry. Or even that Stone Edge can be really inaccurate at times. We do see the Rock Slide. It does a ton of damage to Vikavolt. If Oranguru here moves next and gets that Instruct attack and the Rock Slide connects, that could be huge. But Vikavolt moving first, it flinches. We see the Instruct from that Oranguru into the Gigalith. Will it connect with that Vikavolt for the knockout? And it does. Collin is down to his last two Pokemon, and it is now 2 versus 2.
Yeah, very quick swings of momentum, of course. I think Patrick pulling out the Oranguru, getting the Trick Room up, brings the momentum back to him. It's been a completely different game from game one, a lot more about the board positioning, and both players just trying to get a big foothold. This is definitely a ledge for Patrick to stand on now, but Metagross coming in, he's probably going to have to switch up the move that he uses. It doubles with the Instruct, and I think whatever he goes for, it's going to be quite hard to knock out Tapu Fini. So Collin definitely with a way out here. He just needs to weather the storm for a little bit more.
Definitely. That Metagross is going to be able to deal a decent chunk of damage to Gigalith, but we have seen the Instruct Rock Slide. And, you know, unfortunately, it's one of those situations in Pokemon where if your back is against the wall, having a chance to flinch your opponent 30% and then an additional 30%. So I believe that's a total of a 45% chance of flinching your opponent's Pokemon can really turn games around in, you know, maybe I think that's what Patrick is looking to rely on here. Or, you know, an Earthquake would also be a great option, and a lot better than what I was just saying. It's going to deal a ton of damage to that Metagross, but will it be enough for the knockout? Unfortunately, it is not. If Oranguru moves next, it could be over for Metagross, but we do see the weakness policy boost, and we do see that Instruct. We're going to get another Earthquake from Gigalith. Will it be enough to knock out that Metagross? I don't know. It's going to be really close. Metagross, are you going to hang on? Are you not going to hang on? It's knocked out by the earthquake. So Tapu Fini left with just approximately 40% of its health using Muddy Water, but Gigalith dodging the attack.
That's the real problem there. That Muddy Water really needed to hit Gigalith, and it really needed to get the accuracy drop as well. I think that was Collin's only out after Patrick revealed he had both the Earthquake and Telepathy on his Oranguru. Some people up in the air on what ability to take on that, some people leaning towards Inner Focus, but we do see it with this Telepathy, so he's free when he needs to. Just throw out those Earthquakes. That's been really useful for him, because if he didn't have the option to do that without knocking out his own Oranguru, he kind of would have been in a bit of a different game. But having that option to be able to freely do that, really good team building from Patrick coming out here.
And that's definitely the benefit of having Oranguru as more of a late game Trick Room setter as opposed to something you set out immediately on the field. We don't see as much fake out in this metagame as we've seen in past years, but having that telepathy ability means you can switch it in on an Earthquake, you could switch it in on, we don't see the option on Patrick's team, but something like a Discharge. It's just really a very versatile ability. And to be given on something that is great with supporting the other Pokemon on your team with that Instruct allowing you to attack twice, it's a brilliant Trick Room Pokemon. I love Oranguru.
I'm a big fan of Oranguru too, waving his palm frond at his friends to pretty much get them to go again, and being able to attack twice with your Trick Room setter not relying on its own stats. We see a lot of Trick Room setters aren't offensive themselves, but Oranguru has this really interesting option in Instruct in that you only need one of the Pokemon on the field, its partner, to be the Trick Room sweeper as such, because you can be using their move twice. Admittedly, it is the same move over and over. Then you're able to just push on and do big damage. So if you know that's the move you want to use, you pick that and you get to use it twice, which is something we've not seen in Pokemon before.
No, it's definitely not. And it's a huge gain to these, bulky, slow Trick Room teams to be able to do that. You don't have to worry about, well, what is my Trick Room setter going to do now that I have Trick Room up? I don't have any other attacks. I don't have a good item because I need to carry that Mental Herb or that Lumberry, so I'm able to always consistently get Trick Room up. It is really just a beautiful Pokemon for if that's your kind of team that you like to play.
Yeah, if that's an option you like, it's something to go with. So speaking of it, we'll give a quick rundown of the teams again. Patrick Smith's team on the left is the Tapu Koko, the Crocodile, the Gigalith, the Braviary, Celesteela, which is the offensive one, and the Oranguru we've just been talking about. Give me Collin's team.
All right, Collin already selecting his Pokemon for this game. Garchomp, Arcanine, Metagross, Tapu Fini, Vikavolt, and Porygon 2. We did see Trick Room from Patrick this game, and looking at Collin's team, that Porygon 2 is most likely his answer to Trick Room, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see him bring it this time around.
Well, the other thing I noticed that was quite interesting is the Vikavolt actually moved between the Gigalith and the Oranguru in Trick Room. If it hadn't got that flinch, it may have been able to do a little bit more. So some people, not only using Vikavolt for the synergy it has with Garchomp, but the way it functions quite well in Trick Room. So it'd be interesting to see if he can keep that around, maybe do a little bit more with it. That's what I'm excited to see from Collin. Maybe he's just going to have to play his own Trick Room though. He's going to have to switch up the Pokemon he brings and try and do damage that way.
We're not switching it up yet. We see Tapu Fini and Vikavolt again from Collin, Tapu Koko and Crocodile on Patrick's side of the field. We did see that Tapu Koko game 1, but Patrick was so quick to forfeit with it. I think he wanted to keep something about it secret for this game, and now we're going to get to see what that is.
It definitely is something that Tapu Koko's come back. It started at the beginning of the season exceptionally popular, using an almost standard moveset, but as we've moved in a couple of weeks into this format, about a month now, people have been developing different sets, different way they like to run it, and I think there's definitely a discussion for it as, how it fits your team. It can be adapted to fit your team. Unfortunately, it doesn't get the electric terrain up, so that's good because it's not like Vikavolt would benefit from it anyway. It's not like he's giving it to Collin, and Tapu Fini getting that misty terrain is quite nice. So I like the change up from Patrick. Obviously, he's seen something in this that he wants. Vikavolt not able to throw out any super effective damage in that slot next to Crocodile this turn though, so that's always nice.
Dazzling Gleam from Tapu Koko into the Tapu Fini and the Vikavolt. Crocodile not taking damage from the Dazzling Gleam from Tapu Fini, which does a nice chunk of damage to that Tapu Koko. Unfortunately though, Vikavolt targeting that protecting Crocodile with a Bug Bite.
A little bit better on the turn from Patrick there. We've gone back to a slower game. No turn 1 knockouts this time like game 1. I like that Tapu Koko just gets some chip damage down on the pair of them. But now Crocodile needs to come online, needs to be doing a little bit more. Of course, it can't catch Vikavolt with a ground type move due to the levitate ability, but I think it can still put good pressure on something like the Tapu Fini. Of course, the Tapu Koko can put good pressure on the Tapu Fini, but decides not to go for it, decides to Dazzling Gleam, and I think misses the opportunity to deal even bigger damage there.
Yeah, definitely a read that Patrick failed to make. I have a feeling he thought Collin might switch in another one of his Pokemon. Maybe that Garchomp if he was predicting the Thunderbolt and hoping to catch it with a surprise Dazzling Gleam on the switch. We see a second Dazzling Gleam from that Tapu Koko, and a Z move as well from Patrick.
Well, it was definitely a backup plan from Patrick there. He did get some chip damage down on the Tapu Fini. He knows how much this Tectonic Rage will do to the Tapu Fini, and now he definitely knows he's in range to get that damage down. So it's going to be coming out and targeting the Tapu Fini, of course. Very, very likely to get a knockout, and again, a brilliant execution of the Z move by a player puts him in a significant advantage in the game.
Yes, so Tapu Fini is knocked out thanks to that Tectonic Rage. Bug Buzz from Vikavolt connecting with the Crocodile this time and scoring a knockout as well. So Collin and Patrick trading Crocodile for that Tapu Fini.
A very interesting trade of Pokemon, of course. Patrick having to use his Z move to get that knockout is quite a commitment. Collin, if he's bought the Garchomp this time, does mean that he has it in the back. So I'll be interested to see how that kind of shapes up. But Collin, if he has it, could bring it in now, and he has the pressure to use Tectonic Rage on that Tapu Koko, so that's going to be really, really interesting. I like the way he used it in Game 1. Wasn't so sold in Game 2 because he obviously got intimidated. Definitely up to him to push on.
Yes, so both these trainers taking their time to select Pokemon here. A very critical decision. It could make or break the rest of this match. There is championship points on the line. There is prize money on the line. If you're going to make a really great decision, now is the time you want to do that. We see Patrick send out the Oranguru, and we see Collin send out his Garchomp. So that Oranguru might be a hint at Patrick's last Pokemon. Maybe he'll try to set up Trick Room this turn, knowing that Tapu Koko will get knocked out. So if that Gigalith is in the back, it can come in and start instructing Rock Sliding or instructing Earthquaking again.
He did a sterling job last game, actually, of setting up in advance, something good players do. They obviously know what's coming. It does give Collin some indication, and he's under pressure from the Tapu Koko. It's going to be close on the Vikavolt if it can get a knockout with Dazzling Gleam, and of course it's going to be doing really big damage to the Garchomp, so maybe we're going to see a little bit more defensive play from Collin. That Dazzling Gleam's been doing consistent damage for Patrick all game, and I think this is going to be a turn where Collin needs to weather the storm and retaliate quickly.
Vikavolt holding on, Dazzling Gleam dealing over half damage to that Garchomp. Vikavolt showing its item. I believe that is a Wiki Berry Earthquake from the Garchomp, targeting down that Tapu Koko and that Oranguru. We know it's not enough to knock out that Oranguru, but will it be enough to knock out the Tapu Koko? It is. So if Patrick gets a free switch in for that Gigalith and gets Trick Room up, that could be huge. Oranguru, though, not using Trick Room, instead using Psychic to target that Vikavolt, who holds on and retaliates with a Bug Buzz. This will be super effective, and it's enough for the knockout.
Very good play by Collin. Patrick not going for the Trick Room, obviously thinks he's going to be able to knock out the Vikavolt, thinks that Dazzling Gleam's going to leave it with a sliver of HP, but a fantastic item choice from Collin before the tournament to put the Wiki Berry on there. Very good. It's something that we've seen those berries popping up a lot more, and now Gigalith is staring down a Garchomp who hasn't used his Tectonic Rage and a Vikavolt who will move before it without the Trick Room. I don't think it's going to be enough for Patrick to swing this game back in his favor.
Yeah, but Patrick, very well played. You know, he had a very tough decision to make that last turn. He needed to decide if he wants to try and get Trick Room up or if he wants to try and knock out that Vikavolt before doing anything else, knowing that Vikavolt had that Bug Buzz to deal super effective damage to that Oranguru. I think he made the right choice with that Psychic because, as we saw, that Bug Buzz did knock it out. But unfortunately for him, he just was not able to do enough damage, really thanks to that Wiki Berry. If that hadn't been on that Vikavolt, we would have seen a completely different game as Garchomp's massive Tectonic Rage knocks out that Gigalith in one hit, and Collin is moving on to the top 8 round here in Dallas. Well played to both these trainers.
Yeah, very good game. Very entertaining, I think, for everyone involved. A lot of people outside really enjoying it and seeing an interesting use of a new Pokemon. I think the MVP of that match, and I think probably the MVP and newest development of this tournament is the
Definitely.
Vikavolt. So people trying it out, people really enjoying it, and I'm going to see how far it can go in this tournament. I think
Yeah.
it's got legs in it.
Yeah, I am loving all these Vikavolt teams. I was planning on my flight home breeding one for myself and maybe trying it out a little bit.
I think I might give it a go. I do love the bug-type Pokemon, so that's definitely been an exciting one.
It's a very interesting typing, as we've seen it played both offensively and defensively, which is something I really like in a Pokemon. It's very versatile. And, you know, that synergy with Garchomp, we keep coming back to it at the start of every metagame, I believe, in Pokemon, that Earthquake Discharge combination. But that's just because it's so good. It's able to deal consistent damage to a lot of different types of Pokemon. And sometimes having a mode where you can just easily know if I press these two moves, I know I will have a favorable turn. It's just a lot of help mentally going into a battle, because you can start dealing damage, you can start figuring out your strategy, and there's a little bit less thought you need to put into it, which means you have more mental power, if you will, saved up for those turns where you have to make the tough decisions.
It's really tough on players when they have to make the easy ones, but if you pick an early knockout with the Discharge and the Earthquake, you're just on the front foot to keep going.
Definitely.
And Vikavolt, the only Pokemon available this year that actually is a electric type who isn't on the ground. So players kind of shoehorned into that team decision, you know, if they wanted to do that kind of throwback
There
concept.
is always the air balloon item. It's not that great,
feel
but
air-
it's there.
Air Balloon has not been popular once. I've seen a couple of them, maybe on Heattrans back in the day, but
I remember those
if somebody
games.
pulls out an Air Balloon Tapu Koko, I will be impressed.
Personally, I'm hoping for the air balloon Xurkitree, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Someday. You heard it here first. All right, let's talk about our next match, because we're going to jump straight into this today.